Oh my gosh, pay attention to reimbursement. Reimbursement. How are you making money, by the way, if it's not a reimbursement, right? It's like, it's all the business fundamentals.
Hi, Polina. Thank you so much for joining us today. We really appreciate you taking out time, and I think let's get right into it. So, do you mind talking a little bit about your own professional journey, and then if you are able to link that with your current organization, Teal Health, where you are working as head of products, if I'm not wrong.
Yes, that's right. Well, it's great to be here. Thank you for having me. I'd love to share a little bit about my background, but I think I need to go a little bit like further back in order to really give it meaning and color. Um, I grew up around a lot of really strong women that were doing really hard things. And while they were doing that, they also somehow still had the energy, spirit, and time to help those around them, whether it's friends, family, community. So I think this ethos of hard work and helping is something that really permeated my upbringing. So that's the first point. The second thing that I'll share that's transitioning a little bit more to like the professional side is I've always loved math and science. I'm a trained mechanical engineer by background. And when I was doing my graduate studies at Stanford, I really fell in love with startups and
Mhm.
specifically medtech startups. And since the campus in the Bay Area is just such an incredible ecosystem of entrepreneurs and startups, I started basically moonlighting for small companies while I was still doing my studies. So that by the time that I finished my PhD, I knew that this was the world that I really, really wanted to spend time in. Um, and so over the years, I really started out my career as a traditional mechanical engineer. But I also tend to ask a lot of questions around why you're building certain things. And hey, maybe we should be looking over here at this problem than necessarily this problem. And so I really found that over the years, shifting more to product management was just a much better fit for me to be able to play that role and really have a lot of that ability to stream decisions in the very beginning of a project. And also over the years, as I was growing and maturing in my career, I was also growing and maturing in my personal life and becoming a mom and really having all of these interactions with the healthcare system that were incredibly personal and some of them incredibly disappointing and atrocious. And so there was just a lot of personal motivation for me to spend time in women's health. And in my current role at Teal as head of product, I've been able to really build and have an impact for an experience that is just universally hated by women. Cervical cancer screening that most women know as a pap smear is hated by basically everyone that you can talk to that's ever had one. In fact, there's a good segment of women that should have one and have not had it because they know how painful, uncomfortable, and just like overall terrible it is. And so to be part of a team that was really leading this very important problem and finding a solution has been just incredible and fulfilling.
That's great. Thank you so much for sharing your journey. And I want to ask you this question that project management is full of challenges, if I say, because uh, typically when you are part of building a product like Teal, if it's a digital product or a device product, I think the technical or engineering teams are a little bit they are in I would say in easy spots, because most of the time those team members are working in silos, or they don't have to interact well, and they know their clear directions. But somebody in project management, and especially the one who are leading those departments, you have to balance a lot of expectations, not only with your internal teams, but maybe with the management, with stakeholders, with the potential clients, and all those. So it's a very challenging role to be in. And if I ask you what part of your job you love the most and what part of your job you kind of avoid doing, what are those things?
Yeah, I mean, I actually really like the just owning the context and having a lot of broad visibility and like owning that storytelling. I think it's really enjoyable to me. And having spent time either in like different functions or enough time with various functions, it's actually really fun for me to be able to craft a story in a way that makes sense to them or in a way that speaks specifically to their needs, right? Like if I'm launching a product or an initiative and I'm initially telling that story to like the engineering team, that's going to have a very different spin to it than that same story that I'm telling to our clinicians in the medical team. And that's ultimately the same one, right? Like it's the same initiative, you're solving the same problem, but the words that you're using, the deep dives that you're making along the way are really different. And again, for me, I think this is the thing that kind of keeps me on my toes and provides a lot of just, I don't know, just like dynamics and fun for me.
Right.
I think the not so favorite part is honestly working in healthcare and health tech. There is not a small amount of just regulation and dotting I's and crossing T's and minutia that is incredibly important and you cannot gloss over, but it's also very tedious and it's like for me personally not necessarily the fun part by any stretch of the imagination. I actually just had a meeting earlier with a new team member on the quality team, and she was asking about our design controls process, which is like a standard process in medical device development where you're taking your program or your product from like phase to phase to phase with very rigorous documentation along the way, but especially as you exit each phase. And so I was the owner of those phase exits, and I just remember how like just tedious and painful they can be, but also they're incredibly important because essentially your FDA submission hinges on that work and you getting all of those things right.
Absolutely. Makes sense. What are those tools that you use on daily basis in order to handle your overall product management? For example, you may be using some tools to record the documentation. You may be using something for keeping a good track of ideas that you may want to implement in near future, uh, backlogs of ideas and all those things. So how does your tool set looks like with respect to project management area?
No, it's so funny. There's one part of my universe that encompasses a lot of like creative people that do a lot of nonlinear thinking that I'm like very appreciative of and try to learn more of. I am wired as a very linear, like logical, you go from A to B to C kind of person. And so when it comes to that, I actually do a bunch of my day to day in the sauna. And so this is anything from managing and creating, quite frankly, the backlog to, you know, like Gantt and roadmaps. For the software side of the project, I use Jira integration there to make sure that like those tickets are tracked all the way through. So that's one of my tools. Going back to sort of like the creative ideation side, My design team has definitely pulled me more and more, and I'm grateful for it, into Figma. That gives you just a lot more creative surface to put things down. So Figma is actually another place that I spend a bunch of time. And this is where I do a lot of just brain dumping, and organization, and kind of like just a knowledge repository that doesn't have to be structured. But this is where I sort of take the unformed thoughts and try to put some structure to it. And maybe the last tool that I'll mention, and this is just around like teams, etc., is I'm a big believer in distributed teams being able to work asynchronously. And I found that like video recordings of walkthroughs, or like meetings where not everyone can make it to that meeting, have been incredibly helpful.
Great. So, and again, a couple of questions on the project management, and then we will dive into the Teal's philosophy and business model. How do you ensure that you have good visibility on the progress of your sprint or your roadmap? Do you have any suggestions for projects management that they can follow to make sure if the scope is deviating? What are the signs you look for to detect that as early as possible to make the course correct?
Yeah, I mean, there's honestly like no magic there. It's good old fashioned stand ups,
Mhm.
is kind of like my first go to make sure that progress is being made. It's funny, I just went through this pretty extensive, whatever, 2026 roadmap planning process. And I'm also a big fan of essentially rolling roadmaps. So you can do all the planning and all of the blocking in the world for the next year, for the next 2 years, for the next 5 years, wherever it is. Realistically, at least for me and the companies that I work with most often, like the only thing that's really like written in pen, if you will, is the next quarter. Everything else is in pencil, and chances are it'll get rearranged.
Right.
Right. So I think it's important to have like visibility to a broader horizon, but like realistically, you only know what you're doing about a quarter out. And even there, to your point, even when you're operating within a sprint or within a quarter, chances are whatever you scoped in the beginning, some new piece of information has come in, something on the business side has changed that you have to adjust all the time. I mean, all the time. And so this is where you constantly have to play this trade-off of like, hey, this new piece of information came in. I think this is either like increased scope, which means more resources, or pushing the time out. Is it a big deal that we push the time out? If yes, it's a big deal, fine, we'll keep the timeline, but maybe your V1 isn't actually looking like the V1 that you thought. So there's a lot of negotiation, both with the folks that are actually executing and building whatever it is that you're building, and the cross-functional stakeholders that have a vested interest in the outcome.
Makes sense. So, do you have in-house teams, or you also work with external vendors as well in terms of your product development?
Yeah, I mean, we're very, very lean. We do have our core teams in-house for engineering. We also work with a bunch of contractors, right? Like our QA is outsourced, but we have found a really good way to make sure that they're well folded into the overall product development process. If I'm switching over to talk about med device, right, like our clinicals, a lot of our documentation, like all of that was also outsourced. But at the end of the day, you have to be very strategic about who you partner with and then which functions you have in-house, because like those are the functions that actually have skin in the game and should have final approval, sign off, visibility to like all the important deliverables that external functions might be delivering to you.
Makes sense. Makes sense. Thanks so much for sharing details on your product management philosophy and processes and tools. So, if we talk specifically about Teal Health now, you mentioned a little bit about the what this organization is doing, the at-home screening, and I think they say that just like old habits, healthcare habits are also difficult to change. So, what are the typical barriers that you have to work through in order for this product to roll out and get users to use it? Because I think it's a different idea, it's a unique idea, it's a new idea. So, what were typical barriers or challenges that you encountered early on that you solved in order to reach where you are right now?
Yeah, I will say that this is a unique product where when you explain what it is to the user, essentially no one says no. And the response has universally been, my God, yes, sign me up immediately. It is that much of a burning problem. I think where we've experienced more resistance and hesitation has been on the systematic healthcare front. And the first point of resistance was just making sure that the device and the overall test is safe and effective. And that's a very, very reasonable concern and checkbox to go ahead and check. And that's why we spend so much time and resources going through the FDA, because we want to show that we're safe and effective. We want to show that we are equivalent and, quite frankly, better than the standard of care. So going through the FDA and getting that authorization was a huge step and really a validation towards the technology. So that was a big one, and thankfully that box is checked. I will say the residual challenges that we're seeing is just around the health ecosystem being more accepting of this new way of doing cervical cancer screening. We have camps of physicians, of providers that see this, clear as day. This is a need. This is a great solution. There's also some in the ecosystem that are just used to doing things the way that they've always done them, and therefore come up as like more resistant, right? Like, why change? What's in it for me? And I think listen, change is slow, especially in healthcare. But it's really great to see a company like Teal, fighting the fight, and I think we'll get there.
Yep, yep, sounds great. Yeah, of course. I I think the best selling point always have been even in healthcare, that if you go and you tell the stakeholders in the ecosystem how much money you are going to make them or save them, of course that's the best selling point. But yeah, the efficiency of the product speaks itself. So if we talk a little bit about FDA regulation, it's definitely not easy. And if someone is building digital health or healthcare products, they can be devices, they can be software products. What are common things they need to consider early on if they are looking forward for FDA approval? If you have to highlight two or three key things they need to consider from the day one, what are those advices from your end?
Yeah, I mean, definitely plan on your clinical trial taking longer and costing more than you expect. Just
Hmm.
full stop, do your best at budgeting, bring in all the experts, and then at the end, put like a 2x on it, because it will absolutely go beyond whatever it is that you were initially budgeting for. I think the second part is again about ecosystem, right? So you could have the best clinical solution in the world. It could be hardware, it could be software. How does it fit into the current ecosystem, into the current workflow? And this is where like you have to really play this delicate act to find the balance between carving out enough inefficiency out of a given system or process, but not making it disruptive enough so that the owners of those processes are just going to balk and walk away.
Right.
And again, it's like it's very difficult, and oftentimes it's not going to be sort of like one fits all solution. Oftentimes you have to find partners, health systems, providers that are really aligned and understand what it is that you're trying to do, and get traction with them, and then have it spread out. And then the last thing that I'll mention is, oh my gosh, pay attention to reimbursement. Reimbursement. How are you making money, by the way, if it's not a reimbursement, right? It's like, it's all the business fundamentals. Because again, you can have the best product, you can have the best code, the best med device, whatever. And unless there is money to be made at the end of the day, like you're dead in the water.
Right, right, makes sense. So as I understand, Teal has a mobile application as well, so where users can go and they can see the results and can use that. Is this also integratable with other broader tools in the healthcare ecosystem space, for example, EMRs and other entities? Is it integratable, or you are looking at making it integratable? How does your philosophy around this is right now?
Yeah. Oh my gosh, the EMR HR question. So I'll back up a little bit. So we do have a web-based portal for our users. That portal is homegrown, right? Like we built it from scratch. That sits next to an EMR we're using Healthy that our providers spend the bulk of their time in.
Okay.
We have some integrations, right, that allow for smooth sharing of results with our labs. We are definitely not integrated into your Epic, Cerners, Athena Healths, etc. However, we are also and have been actively looking at interoperability partners like Zeus. At the end of the day, those platforms, those integrations are definitely not cheap. And so one thing that I spend a lot of time thinking about is which solution do you bring on board when,
Right.
right?
Yeah.
So if you're working with a large health system, is this a matter of making it work with Fire and HL7? At one point, can you switch over and perhaps take advantage of Epic's Aura integration layer? Do you already have a partner in your ecosystem that has access to that and allows you to piggyback off of it? So trust me, interoperability is something that we are like wrestling with on a daily basis and will continue to do so.
Right, right. And of course, if with interoperability, I think the impact is going to be skyrocket, because of course once you are part of that ecosystem, definitely you will see a lot of more attraction for its adoption. So AI is another word which I want to address. Is there something you are doing right now with respect to AI in the current product, its design, its functionality, or its behind the scene working? Or if not, do you have any AI roadmap for your product?
Yeah, love the AI question. So I think of AI through two lenses. There's sort of kind of like the internal, like how can we use AI to make ourselves at Teal more efficient, um, or more productive, or like fill in the blank for your definition of better. And one thing that I've seen happening that's really cool, and I would love to see where this ultimately ends up leading, is this blending of disciplines, right? Like, so if I think of the delivery team as really this pod, this trifecta of engineering, design, and a product manager, at this point, the lines are blurred. And there's always been overlap. Like those three have always been a Venn diagram, and it's not uncommon for, like a designer to like transition to a PM, for a software engineer to do PM. Like there's a bunch of bouncing. But one of my favorite examples is the designer that I work really closely with is not only writing like user stories, he's
Yeah,
also like creating PRs and like running it
right.
by the engineering team. And he just completely collapsed that entire delivery team into a single point, which I think is so remarkable. And I think, listen, it's early days. There's a lot of like nascent work that's happening here, but you can see that progressing quite a bit and quite frankly, very quickly, to where one person can like really do the role of an entire delivery team, which I think is so exciting. And I think especially for me, for someone who's like very energized by context, and just like owning that overall big picture, I think that's just so cool. I think it's so cool.
You are 100% right. And my day job is that I work with companies for digital health, building digital health products, and especially around EMRs, health information exchanges, and in system integrations in healthcare. And what I have noticed is that the concept of agile is changing, as you were rightly saying that we used to have different roles on a single team: user experience, graphics designers, and then product management, developers, QAs, deployments. And I have seen more and more that now companies are giving ownership of one full feature development to a single individual, and from ideation till deployment, cloud, and security, it's all the responsibility of a single person. It is a very exciting time, I would say, but at the same time, I think it is little bit scary as well, because I'm sure there is going to be a lot of us will have to learn and adapt to this new and challenging time. And I think one of your roles might be giving your team confidence, giving your team access to right tools, giving your team the right mindset to go about evolving themselves. So if you talk a little bit about your philosophy of making sure that you bring in that element of excellence within the team, what are a couple of things you do to ensure that your team is quality focused and your team is adaptive to the changing trends with respect to technology and with respect to these sort of circumstances?
Yeah, I mean, the first thing I'll say might sound like a cop-out response, but it is true. Hire well. Literally, just get good people in, and that will solve 90% of any future problems.
Right.
So hire really, really well. Number one. Number two, as you're doing that hiring, like don't just hire for skills or previous experience, really hire lifelong learners. Hire people who are hungry for more and love learning.
Right.
And the last part is get out of their way.
Let them
Give
do
them
their.
ownership.
Mm.
Get out of their way. And again, this isn't like whatever, like lead them to the forest and just peace
Right.
out and like let them find their own way. Be there as a guide, as a scaffold, but my God, let them spread their wings and do their thing. And again, 9 times out of 10, they are gonna come back and they're gonna bring you something incredible that's beyond what you were expecting.
Makes sense. And this.
Maybe the last thing that I'll say, because we just went through our like annual review cycle, is let them know that you see them and you
Mm.
appreciate them,
Right.
right? And like actually feel that way about your team. Um,
Right.
the rest will follow.
Yep. Thank you. And my final question, and I think you might already been thinking about that definitely as part of your job. What is the big picture vision for Teal Health for next 2 years? Where you want to be in next 2 years? What is the roadmap and what are the big plans?
Yeah, for sure. For us, it's scale, right? So we launched our product this past summer. So we've been in the market for about 9 months. We went national in January, but this is still just like the very beginning of our journey. We haven't truly scaled. And so, really, for us, the next couple of years is going to be around scale. It's going to be around integrations and partnerships. And it's really going to be about continuing to really hold the really high benchmark that we've set so far with our NPS, with our CSAT. And that's also going to be impacted by how we scale the company internally as well. So it's scale, scale, scale all the way.
All the way. And are you also looking at going into business outside of US as well? Is that on plan for you?
Not in the near or medium term, quite frankly. We've had on again and off again conversations about, one day, and we've had interest from, like a number of countries where this might be a big fit. I will say that the US is certainly a big enough
Yeah.
market.
Yeah.
So, like, let's make sure we, have our roots here. We can truly say that we're a success. And then I think after that, the world is our oyster.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. I loved our conversations, and there are still so many areas we can dive more. And I intentionally kept myself to not ask too many questions on the product management. I personally love that area, love that field, and would love to talk more and more on that. But thank you so much. I really appreciate you taking out time, sharing your experiences, your wisdom.
Love it. It was such a pleasure. Thank you so much.